Behold the Man is a Catholic men's podcast recorded live at St. Marie Parish in Manchester, New Hampshire. Behold the Man is focused on Catholic apologetics, equipping men with the tools they need to understand and share the faith with others. This morning, Ed Broder will present a talk on St. Alphonsus de Liguori.
St. Alphonsus de Liguori was born on September 27th in 1696 in Marianella, Italy, some 2.5 miles north of Naples. He was the first of 8 children. His father, Don Joseph de Liguori, was the captain of a royal galley, and his mother was Anna Cavalieri. And as you might suggest, or you might deduce, we didn't have much on Anna, as women, unfortunately, don't carry the same import in society then as we do now. St. Alphonsus is called a doctor of the church, and one of the things that I wanted to do was to highlight what that means, so on every other slide you're going to be tempted with reading that information. St. Alphonsus was baptized on September 28th, 1696, the very next day. His baptismal name was Alphonsus Mary Anthony John Francis Cosmos Damian Michelangelo Gaspar de Liguori. He certainly was well covered by intercessory power over the course of his life. St. Alphonsus, as we'll see a little bit later on, died on August 1st in 1787. St. Alphonsus lived in a time that was, come on, computer. Okay. St. Alphonsus lived in a time that was fairly problematic for the world. In the 18th century, it was a tough time. The 18th century was filled with rationalism and skepticism. It was incredibly threatening the faith of men. There were brilliant cynics like Voltaire, and he wanted to destroy the church. His battle cry was, "Crush the infamous thing." The leaders of the intellectual world were decrying the faith-filled teachings of the church, and so there was an undertone of destroying that monstrous thing that wanted to limit our thinking, that wanted to limit our behavior. So Alphonsus was born into a very difficult time in history. You might think it's a little bit like ours. In any case, the de Liguori family was a very faithful and loving family. As you can see, 2 of his brothers were priests, 2 of his sisters were nuns. Don Joseph, however, had very different plans for his son. He intended him to be, as his firstborn son, a big deal in the government, and certainly married to continue the family name. St. Alphonsus was described as precocious, enormously intelligent, enormously capable, so much so that at the age of 16, he had earned university degrees in civil law and in canon law. And 2 years earlier than the absolute norm in Naples, at 18, he had his own practice as a lawyer. Very, very, very intelligent, capable young man. Throughout his life, at this point, he had been a daily communicant. But now, having become a lawyer, as a lawyer, his habits and his richness and his prestige led him away from that habit of being a daily communicant. And he, in the course of this fame, was appointed to many prestigious positions because of his capability. In one case, he's appointed as a Neapolitan knight. He was a member of the Parliament of Naples. The story is told that the operas and the entertainment at the time was very lewd, very visual and left very little to the imagination when it came to the eyes. But Alphonsus, a lover of music, and in fact, he was a harpsichordist and a composer in his youth, and he composed several pieces of music during the course of his life, loved music, and so would attend the opera, and to guard himself, he would take off his glasses and he would close his eyes and simply listen to the beautiful music. He also, as the literature tells me, was going deaf and blind at an early age, so having to take off his glasses wasn't so much a big deal, but nonetheless, he did, in his way, during this time of fame, try to protect himself. In 1722, a fairly substantial change occurred in his life. He was brought back, as it were, to the faith. He attended a Vincentian retreat and was recalled to an earlier fervor. From that point on, St. Alphonsus decided that all of this attraction, all of these lauds, all of this fame really didn't measure up to the wonder and the majesty that is God. In 1723, he had never lost a case at this point in a court of law. He was in the course of a trial, read a piece of evidentiary documentation. Sorry, long word, but had to. He read the document and totally misinterpreted it. And his opponent, trial lawyer, succinctly and masterfully pointed out the error of St. Alphonsus's argumentation and totally destroyed his argument and won the case. It so shook St. Alphonsus that he left he left the trade. He left being a lawyer. He walked away. He was so taken aback by it. It's an argued that his battle with scruples during the course of his life assisted in this decision that he needed to walk away because he wasn't perfect. And not being perfect as a lawyer, having never lost a case at this point he was only 30 years old. I'm sorry. At this point, he was 27 years old. So from 18 to 27, he never lost the case. So it was a hard pill to swallow. He opted to walk away from being a lawyer. In 1723, then a little bit later, at Our Lady of Ransom, a parish church within Naples, he laid his Neapolitan sword on the altar of Mary and walked away from his role as a knight and a member of Parliament. He decided that, in fact, he was going to give his life to God. Now, in the course of these 9-10 years of practicing law, his father had arranged 2 marriages for him, one of which Alphonsus walked away from, and one of which his father broke off the engagement. Don Joseph wanted grandchildren. Alphonsus had committed his life to celibacy to God, even at an early age, but had never told anyone. And so there were many, many battles, as it were, going on in Alphonsus's life. As it came to it, in August 1723, St. Alphonsus decided that he was going to study for the priesthood. Now then, they could attend seminary while living at home, and to appease his father, St. Alphonsus did in fact do that. So for the next 3 years, while studying for the priesthood, he lived at home while participating in seminary, and on December 1st, in 1726, he was ordained a priest. During the first 5 years of his priesthood, he lived with a group called the Congregation of Apostolic Missions. They were a group of diocesan priests who conducted missionary work within the area of Naples. And at the time, they would go out and preach these missions in parish churches. And so for the next few years, St. Alphonsus participated in this. And some 3 years into this process, he moved to a new residence, a new congregation gathering, as it were, in 1729 to the Chinese College of Naples. The idea of this college was to prepare folks for missions in the Far East. St. Alphonsus had a heart for the missions. He wanted people to know who God was, and he wanted people to know God's merciful love. In fact, one of the things that St. Alphonsus became well known for is his tender, kind, wonderful, engaging sermons. At the time, it was a very legalistic preaching, so that you did the letter of the law to combat the argumentation of the rationalists and the skeptics in society. Mercy and consideration were considered aberrant to the faith. You had to be tough and hard and faithful. But St. Alphonsus was tapping into the kindness and the mercy and the goodness of God and preaching that, and became very well known.
So
Behold the Man is a production of St. Marie Parish, Manchester, New Hampshire. For more programs like this one, please visit us at enterthenarrowgate.org. The Behold the Man theme song, Behold the Lamb, is provided by Bob Rice, all rights reserved. For more on Bob's music and ministry, please visit bob-rice.com.